So, welcome to the last episode of my Backy Bubble podcast of this year. I'm gonna keep on doing it, but it's the last episode for this year, and yeah, actually, I have my notebook with me because I got this last year on Christmas. And so I've had this since the beginning of 2025, and I wrote down a lot of New Year's resolutions. And I don't know, these resolutions kind of inspired the topic for this episode. Because last year, to start with a little story, last year I was in a completely different place. I mean, right now I'm in Sri Lanka, figuring out what I want to do with my life, practicing yoga, practicing being a yoga teacher, um, yeah, meeting new people, being a whole different version of myself, or being me again. And my, this year started so differently. So in January, I was still in a mental hospital, in a day clinic, because I had such bad anxiety. I barely could move, I could barely eat, I could barely sleep. And I felt like, okay, there's no hope for me at all. And I remember thinking, at what point will I finally have this moment where everything will be fine? At what point will I stop being this mental, can you say mental case, this mental person? At what point will I just be okay? At what point will I just be Becky? At what point, will I figure it out? At what point will I have, some sort of enlightenment that I don't end up in these, episodes where everything just goes downhill? And I feel like this anxiety episode has been one of my worst because it wasn't just mental, it was also really physical. My body was shaking, I had no appetite, I could barely move, I was really scared for my heart to stop beating. And yeah, I was just in a really, really bad place. And then I think it was in at the end of December, but something changed a little bit because I was like, okay, maybe there's a way out of it. And I was also trying to do podcast episodes at that time, but nothing felt right because I was like, okay, I can't do a podcast without having the solution, without being healthy, without knowing what actually to do when you're sick. So I was like, okay, I need to figure it out first for myself. And yeah, then at some point I wrote down my New Year's resolutions, and I had this whole idea how my life would be, or how my life is going to be as soon as I get better. And that really gave me a lot of hope, I'm not gonna lie. But what my point is, it's crazy how differently or different I imagined my life. And at that point, I have these resolutions here, and it's find a job, run a half marathon. That didn't happen. I have this rule when every time I get really stressed out, I need to take 3 deep breaths. I did that. Do my podcast, sugar-free month. That didn't happen as well. I try a new hobby. I wrote down dancing, acting, and a sport trainer, training. And I don't know how to explain it, but when I look at this, I exactly remember what I thought. Like, find a job. I wanted to do a job in fashion, sport trainer, like gym trainer, teaching. I was like, okay, I'm going to do like Zumba, high intensity training, try a new hobby. I was sure, okay, it's going to be acting. And I had this whole life built up in my head, and at the end of the day, and like how I imagined it would be as soon as I'm happy, and at the end of the day, I can take all these boxes, like so many New Year's resolutions I got, but like in a whole different way than I imagined. Like I found a job. I'm a yoga teacher. I did like a gym teacher training. It's not teacher, instructor. You know what I mean? Hopefully. I did that, but it was a yoga teacher training. I did my podcast, and I tried a new hobby, but it wasn't like acting or anything. It was like surfing, skating, all these things I had like in my head, or which I thought were so cool as a kid. And yeah, to like come back to the topic I wanted to talk about is because when I looked at these New Year's resolutions and I figured out like how different my life is from what I imagined, but it's still like I still achieved so much. I was like, okay, that's so crazy. I always waited for this point of like enlightenment and like finding myself and finally having a real connection to myself. No, let me say that again. When I looked at this list, like right before I looked at this list, I did some research on Buddhism. And that's the topic actually of this episode, because these resolutions were like such a like clear picture in my head, and it didn't turn out the way I had it in my head, but definitely the way I want it to be, like I wanted my life to be. And then I read about Buddhism and was like, wow, that's a really nice perspective, which I want to keep in mind for my next year. So during my yoga teacher training, I met a guy. He learned yoga from the monks, and he taught me like 3 words. So there's one word that says everything is changing all the time. Then the second word, I think it's dukkha. That means like it hurts that everything is changing, because for us humans, letting go is a painful process, and you have to let go of the good moments and you have to let go of the bad moments. And the third one is like, and they all kind of go together, but they're also separate, like they're their own thing, but yeah. And the last one is that being yourself or finding yourself is nothing that is forever. So Buddhism doesn't believe in some sort of enlightenment, some kind of arrival, some point of like where you got it all figured out. Buddhism believes in the fact that everything stays a process forever. And I don't even think that they say forever. Maybe that's just like my interpretation. But like if I can add that interpretation, I would say like how I understood it was like they believe that being yourself, or like the closest of freedom you can, or the closest to freedom you can be, is being okay with letting go and opening up to the new, because being okay with everything being a process, that's the closest of freedom you can get. And I remember reading that, and I was laying at the beach and I started crying. I was like, 1 week ago or something, because I was really struggling again, and I was thinking, wow, that's the answer I've been looking for 1 year. Because when I read these resolutions again, I was like, wow, I just I just want to figure it out finally. I don't want to be that kid anymore who's sad all the time. I don't want to be that kid anymore who's like depressed, who's burned out, who has ADHD, who's overstimulated, who's moody all the time. Like, at what point can I just be my happy and positive self again? And I remember like being so hopeful and writing these goals down, but with this thought that I would like find this kind of enlightenment, find this kind of like my true self again. And what the message is in this episode is that I feel like I found something completely else, and that's like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm crying. Is like, I feel like I found some kind of acceptance that there's no such thing for me. That the that it gives me more peace to be okay with the fact that it's always going to be processed, that it's always going to be ups and downs, that I always have to let go of the good moments, but I also have to let go of the bad moments at some point. And that every belief I made up in my head is also just a belief that can change. Like, I say I'm not patient, and like what I read about Buddhism is like, it asks you, but when? Always? Every time, every day, every second of the day. So every belief you have in your head about your life, about yourself, is nothing that's forever. It's not set in stone. It's just your belief and what you thought you're like, but actually what you're like is a process, and it changes constantly and forever. So the picture you have in your head about yourself or about your life is so, like, can you say fluent? I don't know. That it's, I mean, it's quite this thought that everything is so like changing so quickly is quite scary, to be honest, because I feel like to have some kind of idea what you're like and what your life is going to be like gives you some feeling of safety. But what I discovered for myself is that it also kind of restricts me, or I don't know if that's the right word, but like what I want to say is I feel like it kind of holds me back, because I feel like, okay, I can't do that because I'm either not good enough for that, or like I have too much ADHD to do that. I will get overstimulated too quickly. But these are like all things and ideas I have in my head. At the beginning of last year, like I couldn't go on one vacation where more than three people were because I got so overstimulated. And now I've been sleeping with people in one room for 3 months, and after 3 months, it's the first time I got my own room. And that's how quickly you change, and how quickly you develop, and how quickly this whole idea of yourself you have in your mind is changing. And it doesn't mean that you or your beliefs are not real or you can't stick to them. It just means that you don't have to. And I don't know, but this really gave me some peace and some hope again for the next year, because I feel like it's inevitable for me to have these really bad episodes, because I just feel that deeply, and sometimes I forget to take care of myself and I end up in a really bad place. But with accepting the fact that that's like, or I don't even know if it's like, it, maybe not. Like, I don't know. That's the fact. Like, I don't know. And I just know that I'm more okay with that because I feel like with knowing that everything is changing all the time, I'm more okay with the bad times because I know I have to let go of them at some point as well. And just because I think I'm this little depressed girl doesn't mean I actually am. And all these ideas I have about myself doesn't mean that they actually define me. And yeah, it felt like I could decide every day who I want to be and who I'm going to be. And yeah, that's like a really, I don't know, freeing feeling. And I felt like sharing that because I feel like I talked to a lot of people in the last 3 months who've been struggling with this shit. And I feel like we're all in this kind of like circle we can't get out of. And we're all trying so hard to get out of it. But we end up not being able to. And we have this belief about ourselves that we're just like this and we will always end up like this. And I don't know if that helps you. It really helped me. It gave me some kind of freedom and to get rid of this whole, like, also like in Hinduism, they have this enlightenment, finding your true self, finally finding your true balance. That put so much pressure on me. I was like, oh my God, like, I'm never gonna find this. Like, at least not long term. Like, maybe I'll find it in a few seconds, in a few calm moments, but long term, there's no fucking way I'll ever be calm and zen and find like my, yeah, you don't say middle, but you know what I mean. And but what there's actually one thing I can do, and that's like accepting and kind of being okay with everything changing all the time, because that's what life is, and I think that is what makes it special. And letting go has been one of the hardest things for me and still is, because holding on to something is also some kind of safety, or it gives you some kind of like safe feeling for sure. But if you crave like some kind of freedom or some kind of peace, starting with accepting that everything's changing all the time is like the first step. And I feel like it's a never ending story as well. It's so hard to letting go of things and being open for new things and not being afraid and everything and being in the moment. And that's your journey as well. But that's also just like something that's changing all the time. And that's okay. And yeah, I don't know, like, I hope you got my message, because I can't describe how touched I was in the moment I read that. I was like, yeah, wow. There's not like, you don't have to find your true self to be happy. All you have to do is accept that there's no true self and you're just changing all the time. And that's really special. And that, like, took away a lot of pressure and a lot of pain, actually. Because I was really afraid that I was never I'm going to be able to do it, and being okay that I'm changing all the time. I feel like that's something I can do. And that's my 2026 New Year's resolution. Just giving things time and giving myself time to accept change and move on and accept when I'm not letting go and accept when I'm letting go and yeah, more listening to myself. So it's easier to be part of the process instead of fighting the process. And yeah, maybe that's a good last sentence. Being more part of the process and less fighting the process. Yeah, I hope all of you have like the best New Year's Eve, or like whatever you need, kind of New Year's Eve. I hope you have a great time. I hope you're all doing good. And do what feels right for you. If you don't feel like partying, if you don't feel like going out, if you don't feel like anything, just stay at home, do what is right for you. There's no pressure. There's really no pressure. And I'm really excited to see you in the next year and see what's happening then. Thank you all for listening. If you want to support me, please follow my Instagram. It's called Becky Bubble Podcast. And yeah, see you next year. Bye bye.